First, economics. One little snapshot. A study from 2016 where professors from the University of Chicago and MIT sent out 5,000 fictitious resumes in response to hundreds of different help wanted ads in Chicago and Boston newspapers. Each resume included identical qualifications except for one variation. Half the applicants had Anglo-sounding names. One, in fact, was Emily Walsh. And the other half had black-sounding names. One was actually Lakeisha Washington. The ones with the Anglo-sounding names received 50% more callbacks for interviews than their black-sounding counterparts. Empirical proof of systemic racist inequality, where all God's children need to be equally united in Jesus. Second, healthcare, where inequality is even more pronounced. African Americans have always experienced a comparative lack of access to the entire healthcare system. This has now been multiplied by the COVID crisis. New federal data just released shows that black death rates for those people aged 45 to 65 are 6 times the rate for the white population. Even more shocking, in the younger 35 to 45 range, African Americans are dying at the rate 10 times the rate of the white population, 10 to 1 per capita. Again, systemic, racist inequality, where all God's children need to be equally united in Jesus. Third, something very close to my heart and personal experience, mass incarceration. I've been preaching regularly on the inside of Michigan State Prison since 2006. And if you take nothing else away from this message today, I implore you to get everyone you know registered to vote and get them out to vote. And meanwhile, have everyone you talk to their candidates about the issue of mass incarceration. And what should you say? Well, if I could write the rule book, I would require every city, county, state, federal rep, before they take the oath of office, to take and pass a quiz proving they have read and understood a book called by Michelle Alexander, which is called The New Jim Crow. She examines how African American oppression only started with slavery, and that the more things have changed, the more they have stayed the same. After the Civil War, there was only a brief sort of reprieve from Reconstruction, but the evil of racism was too pernicious, too diabolical to be vanquished by something as simple as an Emancipation Proclamation. No, the racial caste system was reestablished by what is called the Jim Crow laws of voter suppression, segregation, and legally codified discrimination, especially in the South. And this carried on through the middle of the 20th century. It included later innovations such as redlining. Then, just as the civil rights movement was taking shape, which traces as far back as Brown versus Board of Education, supremacists like Goldwater started promoting the quote-unquote get tough on crime policies, really a way to oppress the marginalized, aka the black population. This came to a head when Reagan declared his quote-unquote war on drugs in 1982. To put it in perspective, that year, the total county jails plus state and federal prison population was about 500,000. Bad enough already. But in 10 years, it more than doubled. And we entered the age of mass incarceration. And since the year 2000, we have been steadily keeping over 2 million Americans in jail and prison. America is by far the worst country in the world for incarceration. So how does this dovetail with systemic racism? Well, here's an example. Whites and blacks consume and sell illegal substances in exactly equal proportion. And yet 500% more blacks, pro rata, are arrested for drug crimes. That's just one of the reasons there are 5 times as many blacks in prison per 1,000 population as there are whites. Let's look at this simple illustration. If you were born in 2001 and you're white, there's a 1 in 17 chance you will go to prison at some point in your life. Bad enough. But if you are black, you have a 1 in 3 chance of being locked up. That's unparalleled in any country of the world, rich or poor. Here's a shocking takeaway. Before the Civil War, there was a total population in America of 1 million adult black male slaves in America. Today, there's at least that many blacks incarcerated in America. If you want to read about how and why this all transpired, it is described in painful detail in Alexander's The New Jim Crow. Pick up a copy, share it with an Anglo friend, and pray the scales may fall from their eyes as well. So many of our neighbors need to be released from prison. Decarceration is a major issue for this election cycle. We need all to rise up and demand equitable criminal justice reform, bail reform, sentencing reform. Because I'll tell you, Michigan is the worst state in America for the average time spent behind bars for equal crime. The worst state in the worst country in the world. And today, this is especially critical during the pandemic crisis. There are some state prisons here in Michigan that have active COVID-19 cases numbering over 50%, 50% of their total population. So in many cases, a nonviolent felony, say a 2-year sentence for drug possession, could end up as a death sentence. So here's a population of former neighbors who, after having made a mistake, is branded for life as a felon. That is the new Jim Crow. Now, no one in polite society is allowed anymore to even dream of using the N-word, but it's perfectly permissible to use the F word, that is, felon, and legally discriminate against them as second-class citizens for life, denied employment, housing, food stamps, government assistance, education, voting. As a society, can we allow our criminal justice system to create and perpetuate a racial hierarchy in America? I mean, the very fact that in many urban environments, over half the young black men are currently being supervised by the quote-unquote justice system is obviously not just a symptom of poverty and poor choices. Rather, it is clear evidence, open and shut case, as Kamala Harris would say, of a new racial caste system at work. Again, systemic, racist inequality, where all God's children need to be equally united in Jesus. Yes, I believe it's fair to say that the truly Christian community should consider the Black Lives Matter campaign almost as a religious crusade, because after all, it's a natural extension of what is taught to us in the Bible over and over. Jesus directly instructs us to love our neighbors as ourselves, regardless of their skin color, regardless of their criminal record, regardless of which side of the tracks they come from.